Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Talking About Birds, the only Cardinal podcast that, like John Mozeliaks, is not interested in making improvements. My name is Nate Heininger, and I am joined by my co-host, Vince Parker.
Hey, Nate.
If you have an idea for the opening bit, text or leave us a voicemail at 848-48-BIRDS. Hambone, how you doing? We have got a packed show today. Let me tell you.
Oh my God. It's
Packed.
bursting at the seams. I'm doing just fine, Nate.
Yeah, good. We're here in the middle of January, and really the
About
dog
22
days
into Jan, if you had to ask
almost.
me.
I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself.
22.5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Hot and actually quite cold. And we're fresh off the heels of the winter warm up, which let me tell you, I'm not feeling any warmer, though I'm feeling some excitement for the 2025 season after this whole thing. But before we get in, there was a lot to discuss, my personal experiences as well as a lot of news coming out of this weekend conference. But before we get into that, I got some heartbreaking news, like right before we clicked record. The Savannah Bananas announced the lottery results, and I didn't get tickets.
What?
Yeah, they said I haven't been selected.
Really?
Yeah.
I've not received my
What the
email.
F?
Really? Okay. Sorry, I'm checking my inbox right now.
Yeah.
I have my submission.
That's good content. Let's check
I
our
have my
emails
submission confirmation, but I don't have anything following up with that. So I think I might still be in the running.
It says we stopped taking submissions for the St. Louis, Missouri on the Banana Ball ticket lottery on November 1st. All entries were put into a pool, and a lucky bunch was randomly drawn and will be offered the opportunity to get tickets. There's no easy way to say this. Your name was not drawn for Banana Ball tickets for St. Louis.
Wow.
I'm thinking should I reply all? Do you know who I am?
Do you know who I am?
Do you know who you're talking to?
Accredited podcaster. I have credentials. Maybe you could get in there on a press pass. Maybe you can keep flexing that muscle. But I think this is a little bit of karma for you not going to a single baseball game last year. Isn't that true?
That's not true. That was
Oh, was that 2 years
ago?
Oh,
yeah.
Okay,
I went to mini games last year.
See, that obviously irks me very deeply. Oh yeah, I guess I went to a game with you.
Yeah. We went to a Cardinals spot. We were brought in by the Cardinals for a game, even.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm going to remain hopeful. I'm guessing because the Rocky Stadium is larger and because there are fewer baseball fans, I think my odds are probably better than yours. But we'll keep on this beat. Don't you worry. I will hunt this down.
Yeah, I wonder. I cannot imagine that that there is 43,000, 44,000, whatever the capacity is for Busch, 48,000, I guess, if you're doing full. Do they really have that many or are they doing like a reduced capacity for Busch Stadium?
I don't know why they would do that.
I don't know why they would do that either, unless they think some of their antics cannot be properly observed from.
I would be shocked if the DeWitts, for any reason, would want fewer people through the gates.
But also, I mean, are the Bananas big enough to sell 45,000 tickets to something?
They sold out Minute Maid Park last year.
Yeah, okay. They must be.
I mean, they can sell out a Major League Stadium. I don't think they can sell out a Major League Stadium 80 games a year.
Sure, but once.
As this kind of barnstorming, traveling, Harlem Globetrotters-esque thing that they're doing, I think it's working.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there'll be tickets on aftermarket and whatnot, but frankly, I was kind of just assuming I was going to get a chance to buy tickets directly.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, this is, if there's ever a reason to sign up for the Patreon to help support Nate's ability to go to this Bananas
yeah.
game, this show is supported by viewers like you.
Thank you very much. Great always be plugging. And, you're right, I could take my official St. Louis Cardinals media credentials
I
and,
honestly, I think if you kind of put on a sweater vest or something that, isn't what you're wearing right now, and maybe
oh,
run a
there you
comb
go.
through your hair and just walk
What
quickly.
whatever. I look great, first of all. Second of all,
Yeah.
fuck you.
Yeah.
Third of
But if you
all,
just walk quickly with that credential around your neck, I
ah, see,
think
Nate Heiniger, reporter at large, talking about birds. I'm clearly authorized to come in here. That's what I did. It got me into winter warm up. I used that voice the
really,
whole time. Uh huh.
really,
Uh huh.
not only is it good, but it's funny too. I really
Uh-huh,
like it.
yeah.
It's just
Uh,
good.
having experienced being a credentialed press person at this point, let me open your eyes a little bit to the experience. So first of all, the dates of the event that I'm authorized to go into are very large on the press pass. So
Oh yeah,
I think
that's
it
fair.
and then there's a barcode on it that they scan when you go in.
Oh.
So it's pretty, I think, pretty Loctite.
Okay, so maybe you should we should learn what kind of car Derek Gould and Katie Wu drive
Mhm.
and follow them around for a little while and then walk in a little group with them into the stadium.
I think there's a portion off the shoulder of Highway 40 that if you get enough of a speed, so you have to time this perfectly, I think you could leap onto the roof of
You
Busch
think that
Stadium.
you could?
I think that Nate Heininger could make the 25-foot
Known
gas
for your
jump.
bounding and leaping. Yeah, I think you could.
Mhm. Uh-huh,
Not only
uh-huh.
do I think you could, I would like to be there with a camera.
You'll be down to catch me. And
Yeah.
then, you get squashed and I wake up or I stand up and dust my shoulders off and feel great. Um, Pack show handbone. Let's talk about winter warm up. So as I've been, saying this whole time, and as I talked about last week, I had a pretty amazing opportunity, pretty incredible experience of getting to go to winter warm up as a credentialed, press. Which I've been thinking about how to talk about this, and I thought, for our listeners,
I think they want to know to what degree you shook up the status quo.
uh-oh. Oh man, they're shaking in their boots. Have you not seen
Yeah.
the articles? I revolutionized journalism in one weekend. It's
Wow.
pretty incredible. And just wait till you hear about this experience. But I do think like I kind of want to separate. I want to talk first about sort of my experience of the whole thing. Having never done anything like this before, and being like a true like outsider novice going into a room with all of the experts for this sort of thing, as well as a few other novices who I'll talk about. But uh and then I want to talk, and then together we can kind of go through the news that came from this. But I've got a lot of notes from the interviews that I was able to be a part of. Unfortunately, I had some pre-commitments that I wanted to stay committed to, so I couldn't go to the whole winter warm up. But I did go to the full thing on Saturday. This was a full day. I took a lift to get down there, and they dropped me off just in the middle of 8th Street. She's like, "You can get out here, right?" I'm like, yeah, sure." Immediately almost slipped on ice and fell in front of a moving car. So that was a good start to the whole day.
Damn.
But I'm fine. I didn't get crushed by a car. It took me a minute to find the press entrance. It's like back over by gate 2, like right there where you basically feel like you're standing under Highway 40, which is where I was thinking, I bet I could make that jump. And yeah, you get your little press pass. They let you in through this special little side door, scan it. You can bring your backpack and all that. They have a security and like a X-ray and all that. You go through all that, and then I was just right there at the main, like kind of where the player area. The first thing I did when I went in there is you can go over to the Cardinal clubhouse, like the actual clubhouse. They had a bunch of the real World Series trophies displayed, and I was able to walk around and see the lockers and all that, which was pretty interesting. unsurprisingly, very, very nice down there. They still had all the nameplates up for all of the end of 2024 roster. So like the first one you see is like Paul Goldschmidt and stuff like that. So it's like, oh, well, that won't be there for much longer. I assume they must wait until um like opening day really to adjust all that because there could be so many changes leading up to it. But got a little tour of that, and then you can walk down and see the visitors clubhouse. It's funny, like the path to the visitors clubhouse is lined with like the pennants and shit that you get when they win championships. So it's definitely like make the other team walk through a hall of how good the Cardinals are, uh, which is kind of fun. And it made me think like you've heard about places like Wrigley and others that are ancient, that these underground areas are like dimly lit concrete tunnels with hanging light bulbs. And this was super nice down there. Very, very, seemed very high end. We couldn't go to it, but they showed us like where the private dining room for the Cardinals is. They have a game room down there. They have like a private chef down there at all times, just really, really nice. And then you go into where the press conferences were held. And it's where we were is the same place that they do it after games. So when you're watching like player interviews and coach interviews and stuff after each game, that's where we were, which was pretty cool to see the other side of the camera. But it also wasn't particularly it was pretty mundane, really, what's going on in that room. It's like they have the wall with all the logos, they have the desk that the players sit at and the little microphones. And then there's two rows of just like dining room style chairs, like wedding banquet chairs, and then two rows of tables. And basically everybody, all the reporters and whatnot, set up all their computers on all the tables, and then as players come in, everyone shifts up to the seats and shifts back to the tables, back and forth. The room is not very large. So I'm in there. I walk in and immediately there's Jimmy the cat. So I'm immediately, gobsmacked.
Oh yeah.
What a presence, you know. And see a bunch of names and faces that I have read or watched on TV a ton. Derek Gould, Katie Wu, a bunch of other people. And then I found some of our friends. So shout out to Jake Wood, who does the Viva Alberto's podcast now, had done his own, and Kyle was there. So I spent most of my time kind of hanging out. Like a lot of the blogger group, podcast group had kind of coalesced around the back, the corner essentially, which is not surprising. So I spent most of my time hanging out with them and going back and forth between the the interviews and our little table there. They had a full spread of cookies and chips. I ate 3 cookies, 2 bags of chips, a tiny little sandwich, a Coke, and like 4 bottles of water. I did not burn my hands with cheese, thankfully.
Is
Although
cheese available?
that's what I was gonna say. There was no cheese. There was a hot soup that I did not partake. Do you have
Wow.
any other questions about the available food options?
No.
Okay. So in a lot of ways, it felt pretty crazy, honestly, Hambone, to be like the players would come in and they'd sit at the desk, and then it's just kind of an open, like no one's like raising hands, no one is really doing any sort of organization. It's just throwing out questions when there's space. And certainly a lot of um the veterans, the Goulds and Katie Woos and whatnot would go first and would have a lot of the questions you would expect. And then over time, other people in the room would start to throw out questions. But it was very rapid fire, and most of these interviews were only like 15 minutes at the most. A lot of questions that you would expect. How was your off season, etc. But some of it got a little bit deeper than I anticipated or that I expected. But really, it it did feel pretty crazy that our stupid little podcast, had me essentially sitting in the room, from the player's perspective, like equally available as some of these people who've made their entire lives out of this industry. It was a pretty cool experience, and I'd be on it. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little like I'm gonna sit here and just observe for a while because I feel kind of out of my element right now. I like a lot of these people, but I'm just not the type to just like approach random people and start a conversation and whatnot. So I did keep it mostly quiet a lot, but I did ask a question which I'll get to here in a little bit. But just the experience overall was really, really awesome. And Carson from the media communications manager, who's really like the the one who invited us and was there like facilitating the whole thing, was super nice. And it was a pretty incredible experience. So I'm hoping that we're on this list now going forward. I don't think I did anything to get us removed, but I guess we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, you got to grease those wheels too.
I'll say, it was, if I may be too nice for a second. It was bummer not having you there. I think that's part of our dynamic too. And I think you would have absolutely had a phenomenal time. It's really interesting being just like, like Sonny Gray got done talking, and then him and his kids and his wife were just kind of like milling about for a little while there in the back with everyone, kind of getting their stuff together. And people were talking to him, or the player would get done and step off the desk and like just go and talk to people for a little while. So you really were just like hanging out with a bunch of the players,
Yeah, yeah.
like total access, people able to, they were willing to talk about anything. It was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, assuming nothing changes and we keep doing this show, and um, I will absolutely make it a priority. Like we talked about last week, just the scheduling was crazy.
Yeah.
My life has been unfortunately busy and filled with chores I don't want to be doing. But next year, be there, and I think maybe we can take a little more advantage and maybe be a part of the scrum. Be there.
Yeah, I mean, I was, uh, in town and I was only able to attend one day, right? So I think next year we'll, just maybe plan on being a part of it, whether we are or not, and we can both prioritize our schedules a little bit more and try to attend the whole thing. Because by the end of it, I was certainly starting to feel a lot more comfortable. And I think if I was there for like the full weekend, it's not a lot of people, so you
Right.
start to like I definitely at least like a bunch of the other bloggers, and I was really starting to hang out with them and sort of get to know them a lot better. Um,
Well, yeah,
Probably
like,
though,
oh, sorry.
go on.
I was just like, even with that, the little bit of this experience that we've had, starting with interviewing or being at the bloggers day and having Mozeliak, it was, even in that scenario, we're all essentially on the same level. We're all doing the same thing. We're all hobbyists. None of us are
Yeah,
are like went to school, or maybe some people did. I don't know. I don't want to speak for those folks, but it did take, it's weird. The guy on the TV is right in front of me, and he will react to my stimuli. If I throw a Coca-Cola at him, it's going to hit him, and just getting used to
yeah,
that. I think when you're such fans and such lifers like we are,
right,
is bizarre. But it makes sense that, I think, yeah, next year, assuming, we're going to come out
yeah,
firing and get better and better at this. And um, yeah, it's very exciting though. I was
yeah.
very jealous. It was last weekend was my birthday weekend, and I was thinking I was having a great time with everybody, but I was thinking, man, a really great birthday weekend would be, to be in the room interviewing Cardinals players
Yeah.
back home in
Yeah.
St. Louis. Like, yeah, I
Yeah.
was very jealous, and very happy you were able to go though at the same time.
And you weren't there for at least for this podcast, probably the funniest thing that happened. So we're in between interviews. This isn't a big room, but it's not a small room either. Okay. So, there's 20 something
Oh,
people in
I know
there.
what you're leading at.
And
Yeah.
me and Kyle are talking about some bullshit. I don't know. It doesn't matter what it was. It definitely was not on topic. But again, there's no player up there right now. Everyone's just sort of milling about, getting snacks and whatnot. And
I didn't realize
somebody,
that no player was up there at this moment.
no, we were just in the back, just talking. Now I understand that there's real work happening in the room, even when the players are not there, but still. So for maybe like the 1,000th time in my life, someone comes over and goes, "Hey, can you guys keep it down a little bit back here, please?" Or actually, that was a lot more polite than the way it was said to me. It was just like, "Hey, can you guys keep it down back here?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure, whatever." And I did not realize until Kyle said it later that was your personal hero and best friend, John Dendon, who shushed. I got shushed by John Dendon.
Uh, could not be more perfect.
It's so
We I think we kind of predicted that something like this might happen, and you said, "There's no way. You're the one." And
I
John
know,
doesn't
I
care.
know. I don't, I suspect that he still has no idea who I am,
It
and
would be shocking if John didn't knows who you are.
yeah, yeah. But if I just could not believe, I'm like, I got shushed by John Denton, Ben's arch nemesis, who doesn't know who we are. And Kyle was cracking up. He's like, it was really funny.
That is
Um,
good. That's awesome.
yeah. So again,
Just
shout out to Kyle,
just
and
just supports that Denton's a
it
hack.
really did. It really reinforced some of your beliefs, and I'm like, all right, now I'm on board. Nobody shushes Nate Heininger. You see, I increased the volume.
Also, like, you're writing articles at, like, baseball stadiums. You can't handle a little bit of noise, John Denton?
Yeah. Though that was on that note, that was something that was an interesting sort of fun takeaway for me too, is because we do the whole thing, and then I'm taking the Metrolink back to my house, and so I'm just like browsing what I normally do,
Jamming on the choo-choo?
I'm jamming on the choo choo. I'm looking at Blue Sky and MLB trade rumors and whatnot. And like the big article on MLB trade rumors in that moment was an article about Ryan Helsley sharing information from the interview that I was just a part of, you
Yeah.
know? So it was a kind of a out of body experience to be like, oh yeah, like that's where these articles come from. That's where this news comes from, is like that player conference that I was just in the interview pool of is now on the headline of MLB trade rumors. It was
Yeah.
Ryan Helsley talking about, his contract extension and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Uh,
So you got to there was, like, 20 plus interviews. A any did you have, like, a favorite or a most exciting or one you were most nervous or anything like that?
Yeah, like just to kick it off, it was funny because we're all just again just kind of standing around, and a monster human walks in, and it was Chris Roycroft,
Oh god, yeah.
who is very tall. So I'm like, oh yeah, there's the first player, right? We're all we're all very similarly sized and shaped over on this side of the room, and so the fittest person in the universe walks in, and he's giant and sits down, So that was pretty. I'm almost never standing next to these players, right?
Right.
Although I was standing next to Victor Scott at one point. I was like, oh yeah, okay, so they're not all monster human. Now he might be one of the fastest people in the universe, so not like we're actually there's anything similar about each other, but like, it's like, oh, there's a regular sized person here.
Yeah.
Um, and I like it was cool to see Mozeliaks spoke the longest, and we've got a lot to talk about from his interview. But that was interesting, and he was, I thought, very very candid.
Did he
And
tell you that he was going to be candid or that he was being candid?
uh, I don't think he said it directly, but
I don't know why,
he-
but that always irks me when he announces that he's about to be candid,
he's
but just I don't know, it just bugs me.
um I think we can talk about his stuff here in a little bit. One thing that really stood out to me about the player interviews, was just how nervous a lot of these guys were. I was kind of surprised by that because, like, you look around and it's not that many people. It's a pretty small room, and I know there's like lights in their eyes and whatnot, but it's not. I don't think it's a particularly intimidating environment. But I think for a lot of these guys, it's like I saw like Drew Rom. Thomas Sajasi, Roycroft, a lot of these guys that are pretty young in the league. I thought, at least from my perspective, we're pretty clearly nervous, you know?
I mean, I think
Kyle
I
let
would be.
yeah. I get it. I totally get it. I think it's just something that, like, it came through very clearly to me in person that it doesn't, I don't think, read as much on TV when the box is just, like, centered around just their face and whatnot, or just, like, their them at the table. You don't see as much of, like, the fidgetiness, or it's edited down, so you don't see as much of it. But a lot of these guys were pretty clearly nervous. But then there was the inverse, and that really stood out to me too. So, like, Brendan Donovan walked in there like he's everyone's best friend, and he
Right.
was the most chill guy in the whole thing. He was incredibly comfortable talking, incredibly thoughtful in what he had to say, and was just, like, really engaging. Victor Scott was another one. Very charismatic, super outgoing, like, laughing, just having a really good time in the interview. Sonny Gray, very, clear with what he was saying, but he seemed, I don't know if it was just, like, exhausted, or like, didn't want to be answering this question as much as he was answering it, but he was, like, doing a lot of, like, head in his hands, a lot of, like, like, just kind of rubbing his hand down his face, like, a lot of things like that, that really stood out to us too, that seemed like he just, I don't know, didn't really wanna be talking as much as he was. It wasn't a negative thing. I think he just, like, he kept getting asked, why did he choose to stay with the Cardinals?
Right. That would be annoying.
Yeah, and he had to answer it, like, multiple times,
Yeah.
but he had, I thought, interesting answers. Um, so there was a lot of that stuff that I thought was interesting to pick up on, and, at a high level, like, I did really like what the players were saying, and frankly, I wouldn't expect them to say anything otherwise, but it was really cool to be there, and to start to get a vibe of what the energy is coming from the players for 2025. And essentially, they all said, like, we know what expectations are set for us this year. We know what everyone is saying. But our personal belief is that if you look around the room, we've got the talent that we need on this team to be a good team. And it's just up to us to do it. And so we think we have it to be a good team. And that's the way we're going into it. You can use whatever words you want around, um, rebuild, retool, whatever. Funny moment. Sonny Gray, who ostensibly has likely been, we thought had been a part of this conversation, he was like, "What are we calling it? What are you all calling it? Is it a retool? Is it a refund?" He didn't even know what the word was. There was probably like 9 different versions of the word used this weekend. But you got a sense, like Sonny Gray himself, he said, "I believe I'm one of the best pitchers in baseball, and I believe that if I perform this year, and guys like uh, Wynn and Newtbar and Gorman and Walker and others perform, like, we are a good team, and we can be a good team this year." So, like, I don't want to hear any of this, like, we're not in it this year, which is exactly what, of course, they're supposed to be saying, right? But you did get a sense, like, it's kind of what we've been saying. It's like, yeah, we think it's going to take a little bit longer to develop. We don't think 2025 is going to be the year for the Cardinals. Basically, no one does. And I think rightfully so. But what all of us have been saying is, like, it's most of these guys on the team are the ones we think are going to be a center of a good Cardinal team. It's just going to take a year or two to get there. And what they're saying is, why can't that be right now? Um,
Yeah.
I thought that was fun.
Yeah, I think that I agree with that on the position player side and on the Sonny Gray side, and maybe even two parts of the bullpen. But the only part that I think the real reason that this team is not going to perform up to their expectations, the players' expectations in my mind, is the pitching staff. And
Right.
I don't know if this is a good time to transition over to that, but that was maybe one of the more frustrating things that John Mozeliak talked about in his press conference was the kind of static nature of the pitching staff and how he expects that to, be the way that it is going into opening day.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I'm sure I'll come up with more sort of like takeaways from my experience as we go through the notes from the interviews. Um, but ultimately, ultimately to quote our dear friend and coworker John Mozeliak,
Coworker, yeah.
I ultimately it was a pretty incredible experience, and I was really grateful for the chance. Again, it just felt really silly that our stupid little podcast had me sitting there like either a lot of times directly behind and mostly obscured by John Ditton, or like right next to Gould and Wu
Yeah.
and Miklas, and these people that we really respect.
I think the fact that on 2 occasions this podcast has eaten cookies provided by the St. Louis Cardinals means that we are winning.
Well, so I said that to Kyle. I was like, you know, I've spent so much money being a fan of this team. They're giving me stuff right now, and I'm going to take full advantage of it. So I was getting like, I was just like, I mean, part of it is that our table was directly in front of like the food, but like, I'm, I'm gonna eat this the whole time.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you
okay,
wear a
I do want to.
blazer?
What's that?
Did you wear a blazer?
Oh, no, I wore my, I enjoy watching baseball, shirt
Nice.
and a jacket. It was a very casual environment. We had been sent, like, expectations around that stuff, and it
Oh, okay.
was,
Yeah.
it was all just, like, it's a working environment, casual. Obviously, you don't wanna look like a slob, which is only so much I can do to manage that, but yeah, I didn't no one in there. I mean, there was some button ups and stuff like that,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
nothing too crazy.
Cool.
I before we go in, I will say I did ask one question. I said, I didn't know what I was gonna do, um, and I didn't know what the vibe was gonna be like. But I told myself, I'm like, I'm not leaving this day without having participated at least to some degree. Um, and so I kept like having things that I wanted to ask, but a lot of it was all the same sort of stuff. And like, it'd be like Gould would ask essentially what I wanted to ask. I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna just repeat that same sort of stuff. And so there was a moment at the end of the Brendan Donovan interview. It's like, well, I'll be on brand here and I'll ask something stupid. So Jake Wood, who actually did a really good job this week in asking legitimate journalistic style questions, had asked Brendan Donovan about the importance of the Rickwood game and what it meant to him, and because he's from around there, and just he had a big game there, and it led into whether about his charity. He's very big into a charity that he's running, and it was just this like super meaningful question, or this super meaningful response. So I thought, what a perfect time for me to ask something stupid. So I asked Brendan Donovan, I asked him for some personal advice and what is his current hair care routine, because he's always looking good out there.
Wow.
And it got a big laugh, which is all that I ever need. You know, that's what I'm
A
looking
big
for.
laugh, really?
Well, I said I hate to follow up such a meaningful question with such a stupid one, and that got a big laugh. And then somebody turned and said, how that's how I feel every day. I don't know quite who it was, because I had passed out after asking the question. And he had a really funny response that like, his kids are always pulling his hair out now, and he's been using a no wash shampoo. And then he told me that he thought I was killing it and that I look great. And
Really?
yes, I'm not
Really?
joking. I actually I didn't pull the audio, but it's in there. You can hear it. It's like, watch the interview. It's there.
Wow.
Yeah. And so like people like Kyle, do the entire interviews and post them on X and whatnot. So you can go out there and hear it. It's out there. Brendan Donovan telling me that I look great. And then I awkwardly, hey, you just trying to look like you, dude, or something like that. I don't know.
My God.
So I feel like I
Uh,
crushed it.
okay.
Yeah, it was good. It was
As
good. I'm
long
a
as you're
journalist.
happy. Yeah.
I'm a journo, I think.
I'm just glad you asked a question.
Yeah. I'm getting there. I really think had I been there the whole weekend, probably by the end I was certainly feeling a lot more comfortable with the whole thing. as the day went along. And I think I'd feel a lot more comfortable like getting into the speed of it and just like throwing questions out there.
Yeah. Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad you did one. You made an impression. You got to laugh. I mean, what else do you need?
That's all I'm going for. You know what I mean?
And also there's like a non-zero chance that, Katie Wu and Derek Gould and Jeff Jones know that we're not like insane people, and maybe they'll even want to talk to us in the future. So I think you're
Awesome.
laying the groundwork
We're
that we
getting there.
require. Yeah.
We're getting there. Yeah, okay. So let's talk about John Mozeliak's interview. So a lot of stuff that um what really stood out to me was he pretty much opened up saying like this offseason has been trash.
Yeah.
He said it in many more words and a little bit more beating around the bush, but he was pretty direct saying like this has not been what we wanted, which I mean, Durdoy, but at least he's saying that, I guess like,
We all agree with you, John.
yeah, it was apparently a fan in an elevator told John Mazalek, a lot of people don't like you very much right now. So he's wearing it right now for this last year with the Cardinals. And he said this is the first time in his entire time with the Cardinals that he has to sit in this room at this point and say, I've done nothing this offseason.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like that.
Right.
He did, of course, remind everyone that there's still a lot of time, um,
Sure.
less
Which
time than
there
there was
is.
before. Yeah.
Right.
There was a question later in one of his last ones. Um, he has apparently been a big proponent of and expects at some point baseball will do this to actually structure the offseason and
Yeah.
do a signing period and a blackout period and these things that other sports have done. He said that the original idea is that baseball wants to always be in the headlines. And so they've liked this like big open off season because they can be in the headlines at any point. And I do get that, but that's not really the way media environment works anymore. And he said that players want to know where they're going to be. And this sort of dragged out thing is just really not working for anybody. So do expect something like that to happen eventually. But it'll be a little while. The next CBA is up in 26. So maybe around then, but it might still be a while. But as you've likely all seen at this point, because a few days old at this point, he basically said like our top priority is trading Arenado and kind of everything else revolves around that. And the fact that they've not been able to trade Arenado has been the only reason, the reason that their offseason has entirely stalled out. Now he said they've still been able to do a lot of the other stuff that they want to do, the front office things and like reallocation of resources across other parts of the business and whatnot. But at the major league level, the stalling out of Arenado has frozen the team, and they don't really know that they're going to be able to do anything until that gets resolved one way or another.
Yeah, and I understand that being a point of priority. He's arguably the best player on the team, the most expensive player on the team, and has stated that he will waive his trade clause in the right scenario. I think, we've talked about this endlessly this offseason. I think something else other than the money, I think it's 650 at bats, 700 at bats that the Cardinals are really keen on getting,
Yeah.
because what do you do with a player like Sajc and Gorman and, even to some degree Brendan Donovan, although we can assume that he will get his at bats because he's that level of player. But when you're talking about a development year, you need to get major league at bats those players. And this guy, if he's not a part of your future, which they are making that very clear, he is
Yeah.
not a part of the future, then why give him 650 at bats for the over
Yeah.
the season?
Yeah, and he said as much. So he basically said, because there's been a lot of reporting about the money and all of that, and um, he said that the it is if they don't trade Arenado, they don't have to make other deals.
Yeah.
Him and DeWitt are aligned. that they do not have to cut payroll. They are doing it, in his words, to clear up playing time, and also to provide a clean slate to the new management group. So they will roll into 2025 with Arenado and with Fetty or Michaelis or any of these other guys. They're not going to just trade them simply for a payroll cut. He even said like they've not like allocated Arenado's money to other things, and
Right.
they're just waiting for it. They just simply want the playing time. They want the freedom for future, ability to flex. Because he said like, and the DeWitts talked about this a little bit too. This is not their plan is this is not a permanent reduction in payroll. This is a reduction in payroll while they refocus on development, and they will increase payroll once the team is ready to really, like it makes sense to go and buy an expensive free agent.
Yeah. Yeah, ideally, I think if this plays out the way that we would, or ideally, you trade Arenado, you develop those guys that I was just talking about, you find some innings for the likes of Matthew Liberatore and Graceffo and McGreevy and whoever else you think is ready for the big leagues, and then once you look at your team at the end of 2025, you say this team needs a relief pitcher and a starter, and you go
Yeah,
get those guys in
yeah,
free agency, and then the Cardinals start to look like a more competitive team in 2026, and another year of maturation for VS2 and Nude and Walker and Herrera and all these young guys. You're pushing in, and maybe that is a time where you go and bring in the only person coming to my mind right now is a Pete Alonso type, but a type that can kind of cement the
yeah.
position player
A
group a
big
little
tough
bit more.
guy. You want a big strong guy on the team.
I'd like to be clear. I do not want Pete Alonso coming to the St. Louis Cardinals, and not even for his big tough guy stuff. It's mostly just I don't think the
Well,
Cardinals
there's a
need.
reason why he hasn't found a contract yet. No one. It's an extension of the conversation we had 2 weeks ago about Cassis. No one wants to pay for a first baseman right now, right?
Yeah, I
But
mean, and Vinny Pasquantino was talking about that this week as well. Like, this is a bad time in the history of baseball for a first baseman. They're just not really being looked at as
yeah,
very valuable unless they are.
Freddie
I
Freeman,
mean, yeah,
Matt
I mean,
Matt
really, if
Olson.
they're a Hall of Fame level player,
Yeah,
yeah, that's really it. Paul
yeah,
Goldschmidt a few years ago, of course,
yeah,
winning the MVP. But yeah, it's hard unless you put up a 150 plus OPS plus. You're kind of looked at as just
yeah,
another.
yeah. Um, a few other things that Mozeliak mentioned that I thought were interesting, that I don't know if came out as much in the reporting. He said he mentioned Jimmy Crooks specifically when talking about young players.
Yeah,
Um, Yvonne was asked about a ton across from all of the press pool to basically everybody, especially the pitchers. How you feeling about throwing to Yvonne? How you feeling about, et cetera. And they all had, good answers. Love the guy, et cetera. But I thought it was interesting that Mozeliak mentioned Crooks specifically as a player in development. Um, he said that he has gotten a lot of calls about Sonny Gray and Wilson Contreras. Like
yeah.
teams have been actively trying to acquire them, going as far as to try to convince him to like talk them into it and whatnot. And based off of the Sonny Gray interview, like this is the players. They are like, they are very specifically exercising their no trade clause. And everyone's been fine with it. We've been fine with it too. Like Gray and Wilson, we're happy to have them on the team too.
Well,
And Arenado also, if he's still here, which just seems
I
unlikely.
yeah. And we've
um,
talked about this, and it makes a lot of sense to me. But if you're Sonny Gray and Wilson Contreras, you obviously signed with the St. Louis Cardinals for your reasons initially, and I think it makes a lot of sense to look at Mason Wynn and look at the potential of Newt and Walker and those guys that we were talking about and be like, I kind of want to be a part of this because I think these guys are good. They know what talent looks like, and when you look at all of the other possibilities of where you could land, if you believe in the young core and you think they're going to develop, it makes sense to
Yeah.
control your own destiny. And I think we talked about this a week or two ago. Um, but I think it's highly likely that not only does Sonny Gray finish his next 2 years under the contract that he signed, but an extension, and Sonny Gray maybe retires as a Cardinal. He has his kind of twilight years as a St. Louis Cardinal, maybe being a 3 or 4 pitcher for them as other players
Yeah.
develop.
Yeah, I mean, he talked a lot about his excitement to work with the younger players, that he's at that point in his career where, he had a lot of people help him, and he's really excited to work with a lot of these guys. And he reiterated, he actually called out specifically, I think, something that you've said a bunch. He said, you look at the Central and there's no one running away with it.
Yeah.
He's like, I could go somewhere else, but like, I want to be here. I liked it here. He mentioned a lot about 1 year on a team isn't even enough to really even feel like you got to experience that team. And he said, I want at least a second year to to feel that, to be here, to be a part of the team and go through the whole thing again. He said, I may change my mind in the future, of course, but he said, right now, I feel really strongly that this team can win. And he said, I think I'm a big part of helping that team win. It's like, yeah, yeah, absolutely you are. If the team is going to be successful, they, especially in 2025, they need a highly successful Sonny Gray in order for
Yeah.
that to happen. But he's the one who's in total control over this. I know this is a fan conference. This is a hype up moment. And so they're all playing the part, but also at the same time, this dude is mega wealthy and could have easily said, I want out, and been traded the next day. So I have no reason not to believe him with what he's saying. And I certainly left the room. I'm obviously a little, flabbergasted at the whole experience, and a little peak Cardinal fandom moment, but I couldn't help but get a little like, hell yeah, maybe they can do it this year, when you got all these guys telling you how hyped they are. Like, I had to keep I'm gonna go look at cast and be like, oh yeah, never mind. But like, I couldn't help but feel some of the energy that was coming from the team. John Jay and Daniel Scalzo interviewed together, which was adorable. And it was a lot of fun to see them too. And they were saying a lot of the same thing. They're like, you know, like John Jay said, he's like, I was there for for the Marlins in 2023, and we were supposed to get last place, and we made the playoffs. He's like, he said, I've been there, I've done it, and if these guys do what we know they can do, they could be competitive this year. So again, rational Nate Heininger, we know where this is likely going. But fandom optimistic, just want to enjoy the team. I thought their lens and the way they were going about it made a lot of sense, and it was hard not to be kind of hyped about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think and also with the last 2 years of Cardinals baseball, um, and the maturation, everything we've been talking about it. I don't know. There's a scenario that I think I said it in my prediction or my resolution game is I think the Cardinals will have a positive Pythag this year. How
Yeah,
that all works out, if that relates to their actual record or their place in the division, I don't know. But I think that this is going to be a better team, from a runs scored and runs allowed perspective. Just
yeah.
depends on what
I
happens in
mean,
the Central.
if we go super positive, I mean, look at, you've got a full year of Sonny Gray, a full year of Eric Fetty, another year of Ryan Helsley. If you just have one or two of the young kid starters take a step forward to even just being an effective major league pitcher, like, there have been far worse rotations that have done a lot better than, Sonny
Yep.
Gray, Eric Fetty, and whatnot down there.
Yep.
So I think
So
it obviously is going to land on the pitching, but if the hitting can all come together, like, you can get by a little bit.
this it leads to the one thing I really wanted to talk about. I hinted at this earlier, but to quote John Mozeliak, he said at the winter warm up, I don't love the idea of trading pitchers. We really feel like we have some depth in our rotation right now, so I really don't want to start tearing away from that. Thinking about moving a position player to try to achieve some financial goals should be something we consider as well, but really don't want to. The hope is that we can achieve the number one goal and then react from there. The number one goal, of course, being the Nolan Arenado trade, which we
Right.
already talked about. And so when I hear that kind of thing, I think it makes sense. I understand where he's coming from. This is a team that has had to claw and scrape for pitching depth the last, 3 years? At the
Yeah.
trade deadline, they've had to augment their pitching staff to some degree. Obviously, Eric Fetty last year. And the fact that they're going in with guys like Gray, Fetty, and Michaelis at the top, you can be decently confident that those guys are going to give you innings. Palante obviously took a nice step forward last year. And then Steven Matt's currently ranked as the fifth starter. I don't really see all of the depth. This is more depth than they've had previously, but
Yeah.
I don't understand the standpoint of depth for depth's sake in a season like this, specifically with Michaelis and Matz.
Yeah.
Michaelis, I guess we've talked about this. I guess I understand trying it again, but maybe as a really short hook. I think I would just kick him to the curb now and pay him, and he can go try to sign with another team. Steven Matz, if any team is interested in him, just give up on him, because I highly doubt that he is going to make an impact to this team just because health. He just cannot stay healthy, the poor guy, and giving those innings to other young people. And I think that there are enough young people in the minor leagues that you can kind of have a bit of a carousel and give those guys innings. So
Yeah.
I don't buy the depth piece, other than, like I said, I guess it is better than it has been. But Michaelis and Matz and even Palante to a certain degree, just because we don't really know, I
Yeah.
think you can't really count those guys as sure things. I mean, none of these guys are sure things really, because they're pitchers and they
Right.
explode, but to the degree in which we can try to predict.
He did mention McGreevy specifically as someone he expects to be competing for a rotation spot in spring. And yeah,
But
my
like,
guess is that go on.
like, is McGree, if they are just looking at the spring, is there a chance that Michael McGreevy can outperform and then take a spot away from somebody like Miles Michaelis? Do you think that's on the table?
He said he expects him to be battling for a rotation spot in spring, you know. So I don't know what that means, but as far as what you're saying, like, can he usurp Michaelis or Matz? I would
Sure.
certainly hope. I would certainly hope so, right?
Yeah, I would hope so too.
Um, I think
Any chatter about Quinn Matthews from Mr. Mo?
yeah, there was some questions. I don't remember if it was Mozeliaks specifically, but I think it was. They mentioned like what an incredible year he had in 2024, winning minor league pitcher of the year of the entire league, right? Not just like Cardinals minor league pitcher of the year or anything like that. And he expects him to be, a big part of the future of the franchise, but he didn't really say, at least I don't remember, my notes don't say anything about him saying like specific expectations for him
Sure,
in 2025.
fair enough.
I suspect that, like, to some degree, the Cardinals and Mozeliak specifically just look at the last 2 years of where, like, when the pitching depth collapsed and they were going to a lot of these younger guys, and the younger guys were struggling at the major league level so bad that it maybe wasn't even good for their development to just keep going up there and getting shelled, that he wants to avoid having to go to a Leicester or whatever, like the mid-season add-ons that we keep going and getting just for the sake of throwing innings.
Right.
And I think they're probably just gun shy to, like, what does it look like if Gray and Fetty get hurt? Like, do you even have guys that you want throwing that you feel like are ready to pitch at the major league level? Because that can be bad for someone's development too if they get called up so too early. So I think you want like a couple slots for those guys. And maybe look at a 6-man rotation, but I think they probably would avoid like going all the way down to where McGreevy, Graceffo, all these guys are required at the major league level, regardless of performance,
Sure. Yeah.
or a Rom or whatever.
Yeah, Rom kind of seems like the guy that if somebody gets hurt, he is the lamb to the slaughter. We'll see how that happens, and maybe he has a nice spring and does some stuff. He had, He had a real heater when he came over from the Orioles to the Cardinals. Maybe they found something, but
Yeah. So he
I
mentioned in his interview that he's a couple weeks behind from so he expects to be ready, but he is a few weeks behind the rest of the pitching staff on his on the work that they're already doing. And he said that having a full down year was an incredible learning experience for him. He said he also learned a ton from Lynn and Gibson about what it takes to be able to pitch at that level for a decade, right?
sure.
And that he tried to be a big student of the game while he was out, and that he feels like he's more mentally prepared for the game than he was before because of this year, which is interesting. There was actually a lot of little anecdotes about the players interacting with each other that really stood out to me, and like them learning from each other. Uh, uh, there was several people. I think it was Sajasi mentioned that Brandon Crawford brought over a a little box that he would practice with from the Giants, and now everyone in the Cardinals is using this little thing, and like that stood out to me. A bunch of the pitchers mentioned Lynn and Gibson specifically in their development. I think it was Tink Hence said Keenan Middleton helped him with his slider grip,
Oh,
which was really interesting because as a fan, we think of Middleton as 0 impact on the team, right? But he was there most of the season,
right.
just not playing. And so a couple people mentioned him talking to them about pitch development. And that was another one of the takeaways where I think you would have really loved this is a lot of these guys were all talking about spin rate, pitch design, arm slot, a lot of the stuff that we really like to geek out about. A lot of these guys were really they kept saying like this is nerdy. I don't know if you guys want to hear this, but like pitch shape and delivery and all that. And like Tink was talking about his slider and what he's done to make it a better shape and things like that. And then there was I think it was Leahy was like, I don't look at anything. He said I don't look at any of it because as a reliever, it's impossible to he's like, I don't like looking at my results because he said as a reliever, you can have 9 perfect outings and then one horrible one and everything looks like trash. So I don't look at it at all. He said, I look at it as did I do my job that day? How many times do I do my job versus when I don't, And
Sure.
I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. You're a professional. I
Yeah.
can't even begin to criticize your approach to anything. But it was funny that he was just completely opposite of these other guys. But there was a lot of quote unquote nerdy baseball talk. Um, Victor Scott was hilarious and talked a lot about John Jay, how much John Jay has been helping him, and had this really funny bit about how John Jay practices with a baby glove. Baby glove. Victor Scott said baby glove like 100 times. And he has been taking reps in the outfield using a baby glove. And apparently, on one of his first tries, fucked up and got hit in the mouth by a
Ooh,
ball because he had a baby glove.
I think Ozzie
Um,
Smith used to do that at
I
shortstop, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
you hear about it, right? Yeah, these guys practicing with very tiny gloves. But it was cool to hear uh him talk about John Jay and they were talking a lot about hitting approach and I think it was Kyle asked him about the leg kick he tried to incorporate and how he just did not like his approach at the plate last year and he's feeling a lot better about it this year. Talked about the battle for center field with Siani and he said we both know the job is up for grabs and said we're both super competitive, but we're also friends. So we're kind of challenging each other to see who gets it. I was like, that's nice. That seems fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't seem stressful at all.
But I was also surprised on some of this. Again, the thing with the little red box that Brandon Crawford brought over from the Giants. I was like, how do we not know about something like this? Is this another indicator of the separation of like the coaching staffs and whatnot, and just like the team not being very good at developing players that it took a guy coming from the Giants to teach them about some new infielding
I
technology.
mean, how often have we said that the Cardinals are too insular? You know, you bring in one guy from a very solid organization, and you learn something. Hopefully the influx of new front office guys and maybe even some free agents at some point will help improve that problem. But
Yeah,
when you look at the Cardinals on roster resource, and there are the Sonny Grays and the Steven Matzes of the world and Wilson Contreras, but almost everybody, the majority of the team has come up as a Cardinal and been a Cardinal. Um, so yeah, they're a very insular group. And that doesn't really surprise me that just a shortstop from a different organization would make a big change like that.
yeah, yeah.
Not to
Uh,
mention Brandon Crawford, somebody that has credibility. That
totally,
probably makes it go a long way.
totally. Just kind of looking over my notes here. Tink Hence was an interesting interview. He was one that was really like he showed a lot of confidence, and he was saying how I thought this was just an interesting look into his mind. You know, he said last year he spent all year feeling like I should be in the big leagues. And this year he's feeling I am going to be in the big leagues, and
Yeah.
just like that has changed a lot. And he also said something that was interesting. He said, I've learned that pain is a part of this job."
Ooh. Yeah, if you're a pitcher, I think that
Yeah.
is true.
Yeah. And I get the sense because he's someone who's dealt with injuries a lot. And I wonder, just reading into that, and I could be totally wrong here too, is that like it makes me wonder that maybe some of his the reduced innings and whatnot is him being very proactive about injuries and being very preventative and whatnot. And now he's starting to learn like sometimes it's just gonna hurt to do this, and I just have to pitch through it, you know? And I don't know exactly how to feel about that because, that sounds horrible, but the guy, he throws so hard, and it makes sense that it just kind of hurts sometimes.
The guy he
So,
throws so hard. Um, yeah, I mean, I think, you talk to any major league pitcher or if you look at them at any point in the big league season, they're never 100%. And
yeah,
I do think that there is a learning curve. There is players talk about this all the time, being able, Wayno talking about being able to pitch without your best stuff. I think a lot of that is not feeling great.
yeah,
Arenado playing 150 games a year, your shoulder's not always going to be there. Your base isn't always going to be there, and still figuring out how to play. I think that is an adjustment for younger players. And
yeah.
acknowledging it out loud is a good thing.
Well, and Kyle asked him something about, feeling like you can actually pitch when you're not your most effective. And he said, yeah, that's been a big learning experience for him too, to trust his pitches. Like he's learning that he can get outs with his breaking stuff, even if it's not perfect, and starting to trust that a little bit more. And, he was talking about his pitch shape, and he's trying to make a harder slider, which will be interesting to see this year. So yeah, it was a very, very like in the weeds discussion about pitching, which was really cool.
Yeah, love that. Love
Yeah,
that he's a nerd about it.
yeah,
I think he's going to be really, really good. I think he's going to stick as a starter, and I think he's going to be really, really good.
yeah. He also is similar to like Brendan Donovan. He had a vibe of just like I'm cooler than everyone in this room. I'm not gonna be like a dick about it or anything, but like I'm better. I'm better than all of you.
Yeah, he's a pro ball player. He should feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah, just it was, there were guys that were incredibly nervous, and
Yeah.
there were guys like that. So, I don't know. I feel like I've got a ton of little notes here, but what else do you want to talk about that has like come out from this um that maybe is broken into the news?
Yeah, I mean, other than I think the big thing was Mo and DeWitt talking about that if Nato doesn't get traded, that they're not looking to shed other salary. I think that's the most important thing to come out of it. But yeah, I don't think I have any questions right now.
Yeah. Mo said that they've done a 25% increase to minor league budget, and that's been primarily in headcount, which is
That
interesting
is
because
good.
yeah. Yeah. We kind of, we knew they were investing more. 25% doesn't sound like a ton, but at like a corporate level, if you're putting 25% more into anything, that's a pretty significant gain, especially if it's all more people. Most places are looking for less people, right? So increasing that is pretty cool. I think the last guy to talk about was Ryan Helsley. He had a very open interview too. He said, I did not expect to be a St. Louis Cardinal in 2025. He said, you just look at how the league works. You look at what other teams have done. He said, most teams would have traded me,
Right.
which is interesting. He said he's open to an extension, but the Cardinals have not talked to him about it, which is that was the news that was on like MLB trade rumors and whatnot. But you could tell he's someone who we talk a lot about, like how plugged in are these players. He mentioned AJ Minter's contract specifically, which had signed that morning. So he's very much like in, paying attention, and you can definitely see the dollar signs flashing in front of his eyes as Minter. He's been one of the better relievers in baseball, but not like the best or anything. Just got a bunch of money.
Yeah, Helsley is going to be a very wealthy man very, very soon. Not that he's
Yeah.
struggling right now, but yeah, he's about to make a lot of money.
Yeah, he talked about the arbitration process and how tough it is. But he's like, it's business. It is what it is. A lot of like, I guess Lance Lynn or somebody was helping him get like mentally prepared for it and whatnot. And all the stuff we've talked about, how he's like, you got to sit across from your boss and listen to how bad you are.
Yeah.
But we don't need to rehash all that. Yeah, he said he's super him, I wouldn't expect him to say anything else, but he said he's super happy to be there and he's happy to be a mentor to the bullpen as it develops.
Yeah, crazy that he is now that 29-year-old going to be 30-year-old kind of veteran closer at this point, where
Yeah.
it seems like that time has just slipped away very, very quickly.
Yeah, Kyle asked him if he wants to be a starter again, and
Yeah.
he said yes. He said it's been 7 years, which is like, oh man, yeah, it really has been. He said if he had the opportunity, he would. Which of course, I think that's every pitcher starts as
Yeah.
a start. Most want to be a starter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. I think there's probably even more from this conference, but we've been going for a while, so I think we can probably wrap this segment and move into the back half of the episode. But I will say, like, it's starting to feel more real to me. Pitchers and catchers report in like 3.5 weeks or something, and so
29 days until spring training.
there you go. We are almost there. We're almost there. All right. Well, we're going to talk about some of the other big news that has happened around the league. But before we do, we want to remind everyone that this show is listener supported on Patreon, patreon.com/talking about birds. If you enjoy the show and the exclusive access,
Wow,
that this show brings to you, consider joining our Patreon. A couple bucks a month, whatever you can. It really helps. We use the money to pay for the costs associated with producing this show every week, and anything extra goes into stuff like equipment or promoting the show, or potentially being able to do more things like what I just did this weekend. And yeah, so we appreciate all of our patrons that exist, and if you're thinking about joining, we appreciate that too. Subscribers at any level get access to our private Discord server. I was kind of talking about this event the whole time, this whole weekend while I was in there. I was sort of almost like live chatting it throughout the bird scored, which was a lot of fun to have the crew there to talk through while I was doing it. And yeah, so if you want to be a part of that, patreon.com/talking about birds. Tell your friends, leave us reviews on your favorite podcast platform. That really does help. And Hambone, where else can people find us online?
yeah, you can follow us over on Blue Sky. Follow our skeets over there. We're at Talking About Birds on Instagram. TikTok is back. We have a TikTok still, so come TikTok with us. This show is available to listen to on Spotify and YouTube. Go subscribe and like and love and comment and all over there. We appreciate that. You can find all of our links, t-shirts, everything at talkingaboutbirds.com. And of course, you can email us questions. You can ask Nate about his hair care secrets at talkaboutbirds@gmail.com. And of course, you can call us and leave a voicemail or send us a text message to 848 birds. That's 848-482-4737.
Yeah, I don't have to do anything different because Brendan Donovan told me that he loves my hair. So we were both wearing beanies. I think that's part of it too.
Oh, okay.
But I got it coming
That
out the
really
side.
undercuts the compliment.
Yeah, you can see any of my hair. No, I mean, my hair's pretty long right now, so it was coming out the sides, and
Been
I did the
really funny if you took your hat off and you were bald.
where he's
Thanks,
like, "Oh
Brendan.
God, never mind.
Yeah.
Go get a haircut." All right, it's been a big news week, for the rest of the league too. Namely, a couple big shoes have dropped here.
Yeah.
You want to run us through it?
Well, I think first we'll start out at the top, and that is Ichiro, CC Sabathia, and Billy Wagner have all been elected to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Ichiro fell one vote shy of being unanimous.
So fucking stupid. I hate this shit so hard. There's someone out there, some dirtbag. "Oh, I
Yeah.
don't. He could have had another 1,000 hits if he had played his major. Always in the. I don't know what. I'm assuming either
There's no
someone.
rational argument against it.
I would love whatever dingus out there did this for them to try to justify it, so I could at least understand a little bit more what's
Yeah.
going on in their mind. But I certainly whatever it is, it's bullshit.
He or she don't know ball. That's all that really needs to be said.
Yeah.
That person does not understand baseball. They do not understand what Ichiro did, how he did it, in the time frame that he did it, how important he was to the game, to the Japanese game, and how I kind of viewed Ichiro, especially in his prime, as a perfect baseball player. There was
Yeah.
nothing wrong about his game, and I loved watching him play. I got to see his 3,000th major league hit in person at
Oh,
Coors Field,
I don't think I if I knew I'm sure I knew that at one point, but I forgot about that. That's pretty cool.
which is just a special thing for me. And that was
Yeah.
a lot of fun. It was a day game at Coors, and I believe it was a triple. And there were some Japanese
Seems
folks
fitting.
in the stands that were going insane. It was really exciting.
Yeah.
But obviously he's a first ballot. I think CC Sabathia is a first ballot Hall of Famer as well. I do think that
Yeah.
this does speak to a little bit of Yankees bias. Not sure if he would have been a first ballot Hall of Famer if he didn't spend a good chunk of his career with the Yankees, but
I
I
don't
think
know. 3,000 strikeouts, 250 wins. He's got those milestone numbers that I think probably get
I
him in no
I
matter
think I'm
what.
a
But
little annoyed that Andrew Jones is not in the Hall of Fame today. I'm a little annoyed that Chase Utley only got 50% of the vote. I'm a little
yeah.
annoyed at some of the other voters, but CC Sabathia, for my money, deserving whether he is a Yankee or not.
Yeah.
I think his some of his performances, his Cy Youngs, his longevity, personality, ambassador for the game, everything about his game is
Yeah.
worthy of being in the Hall of Fame. So I think that's great. And I've been a Billy Wagner guy for a while, so
You
I'm
have.
happy that
Yeah.
he has finally made it in.
I think that someone not voting for Ichiro should be an immediate like 5 alarm fire to the commissioner and to the overall management of baseball that their voting system for the Hall of Fame is broken. Whatever justification has led to this person thinking that he's not a Hall of Famer indicates that the underlying reason why people vote or the politics or whatever that have gotten into it or just like the weird old traditions that people are still trying to uphold show that like it's not working and they need to rethink the entire
Well,
thing from the ground
it-
up.
just to be clear, it's the Hall of Fame and the BWAA. It has nothing to do with Major League Baseball as
That's
an
true.
entity.
Yeah.
So Rob Manfred actually, he for once, this is not his fault. He did not
I
screw
know. I
this
do
up.
just jump to them, but like certainly he could do something about this if he felt strongly about it.
I do agree that a great purge of credentials, whether that is a purging by rescinding their BBWAA membership, or these people just dying out, is a good thing. And I think that like obviously, I would love to have a vote, and I have a lot of opinions, but I think
Yeah.
people who are still paying attention to the modern game, who understand the legacy that these players who started in the 90s or 2000s or have left behind, have a little more context for them is important when you're voting these people in.
No,
And
I'm
maybe
just
this
assuming I'm assuming whoever didn't vote for Ichiro has literally nothing to do with the way he played baseball or his stats
right,
or anything. It's some stupid, well, if Hank Aaron, couldn't get 100%, then
yeah.
Ichiro shouldn't get 100, whatever these
Derek
this
Jeter can't get 100%. If Ken Griffey Jr. can't get 100%, if yeah, it's
yeah.
endlessly stupid.
Yeah.
And then also the fact that the one person to get 100% is a closer is
Yes.
idiotic.
Yeah, like, he deserved I absolutely,
Also,
Mariano Rivera should be 100%. So
did
should,
you
like, a ton of other guys.
did you see the news about Mariano Rivera this week?
I saw something. What was it?
He is being sued for intimidating a child. So, we'll see what
Cool
happens, innocent
cool
until
guy.
proven guilty, but, how do you even catch a charge like that? How are you even in a situation where that could be leveled against you?
Oh, man. Yeah,
Yeah,
unanimous Hall of Famer, though. Maybe that'll help.
unanimous. You
Yeah,
can't take that away from him.
can't
You
take
think
that
that's
away
what he
from
was
him,
just screaming at the child?
probably. Um, I hate to even, uh, play this game because it's further facilitating this bullshit that I hate, but, Pujols is the next one up that is like
100, yeah, he should be a
he
100% vote, yeah.
yeah,
First
um,
ballot. There should not be a
a
single person against him.
and, I would say Ichiro equally as obvious 100%,
Yep.
but I don't know, Pujols, like, if it's not, then even more. Burn the whole building down, burn down the Hall of Fame, you know what I mean?
Well,
Start the whole thing over.
clearly clearly somebody will twist themselves into a pretzel to not vote for him.
Yeah.
Clearly that will happen,
I
but,
think if they just made it where the votes weren't anonymous, it would solve a lot of this.
I agree with you. I think even allowing that to happen kind of ruins. Also, if you are a journalist, which you're a member of the BWAA, so you are a journalist, you should lean towards being as transparent as possible. It should just be a marching line for that organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it absolutely insane. And it also is. It's like, because we're journalists now, I can talk about this. It is the like being the story is the opposite of what journalists are supposed to do, and making a stupid stunt vote like this makes you the story, even if we don't know
Yeah.
your name.
Yeah. Someone
Um,
out there is going,
yeah,
I'm the one who didn't vote for Ichiro.
yeah.
I'm special. Yeah.
All right.
I'm more special than Ichiro.
Yeah, yeah, you are, buddy. But
Yeah.
he got in first ballot, which that's really all we
Yeah.
care about, and he is one of
Yeah.
the best of all time. So, um, relatively pleased with the process this year. At least we have 3 guys that
The
I think
outcome is
earned it.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I think Billy Wagner just for doing what he did to the closer position and to velocity and modern baseball, he was kind of the precursor. So I'm happy about that too. In crazy news, I guess this news isn't crazy. We all saw it. Roki Sasaki has signed with the Dodgers. I'm sure everyone saw this. And
Yeah.
then a day later, the Dodgers signed Tanner Scott, 4 years, $72 million. A lot of people think he was the best available reliever.
Yeah.
And this hasn't been reported for sure, but it might be by the time this podcast is out. Seems very likely that the Dodgers are also going to sign Kirby Yates, but that has not been official yet. First, to talk about the Roki Sasaki part of it, I think a lot of people in baseball, it seems like they felt like this was a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
A lot of people have been talking on background, like there was a handshake deal. And something that I found really fascinating is a lot of people are pissed off about the fact that Roki Sasaki and his team were asking potential suitors, hey, my fastball was down last year. diagnose this and give me your information. He then took that information and then signed with the Dodgers. And I've seen a bunch of people complaining that this proprietary information that was provided by teams like the Blue Jays, Padres, and whoever else was involved in this dance is now in the hands of the Dodgers. And I actually, I don't think baseball is broken. I don't think Roki Sasaki going to the Dodgers is ruining anything. But I think that's really bad. I really find that scummy. And I'm not saying it's Roki Sasaki specifically or the Dodgers specifically, but the situation unfolding like that, I find really gross and kind of against the competitive spirit of what we're all trying to do here. And that's,
Well,
play a game and be entertaining.
do we know for sure that like Roki receiving a medical report from the Blue Jays
Not a
that
medical report, not a medical, he asked, what was wrong with my fastball last year and
right?
what would you do to change it? And
Yeah.
these teams presented their information on how to fix that. That information was given to Roki Sasaki.
Yeah, I just wonder if like if I'm the Blue Jays, I'm saying we're signing an NDA on this information, right? Like I'd be I don't know, I'd be
Play
surprised if it was
people
that
on
simple.
background, so take it for
Yeah.
what it's worth, are complaining about this.
Yeah.
So, it is what it is.
Personally, I found so I have not heard that angle of it. And I do hear what you're saying. Like if that's the case, the Dodgers now like backing into even more valuable content and more valuable insights into across the league. Like I can see why that would be a problem. Outside of that, I actually thought it was a pretty fascinating ask from the Roki team because I have wondered like outside of just like they're the best team or someone wants to live in a certain location or whatever, like what does go into these pitches for these players and how does every once in a while like an Angels get an Otani, and it usually comes down to like the pitch, right? And I thought the homework essentially of tell me why I was worse last year.
Yeah.
I could see why that would be good as a player. You'd be like, whoever does the best at this, because Roki he's clearly making a point by coming over and signing like a small dollar contract, comparatively speaking. He's talked about wanting to be the best pitcher in the world and he wants to go about the development like other pitchers. So he clearly cares about like his mechanics and his delivery and having good coaches around him. So I thought the ask actually made a lot of sense and I thought was pretty interesting. This other half of it, I'd have to do a little bit more, but I do get what you're saying.
Yeah, I understand. And yeah, I guess it's thoughtful, it's interesting. But yeah, I don't
Well,
know.
right
The
now
fact that
everyone,
so many people are complaining is, I
yeah.
think, really interesting.
Well, everyone, and I was going to ask you this. Everyone is really on the ledge right now about the Los Angeles Dodgers and the state of baseball.
Yeah,
Mozeliak was asked in the press conference, and he basically punted it, just saying like, "Well, baseball waxes and wanes, and there's
yeah,
always a team that is the powerhouse, high dollar team, and there's always and new teams come and go and whatnot." So he
yeah,
didn't really answer the question, but he was asked because everybody right now is saying like, "Break up the Dodgers, break up baseball,"
yeah.
like it's unfair what they're doing. Are you on the ledge as much as everyone else?
No, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
I think, well, I have a lot of thoughts on what the Dodgers are doing, but I think what it comes down to is that they are actually trying, they are doing everything they can to win, and no
Yeah.
other team in baseball is doing that. I also think that they are reaping the rewards of the success that they'd have had over the last 10, 15 years. They have sustained a good team for a long time, proving to other players that they are committed to doing that, which allows players to want to come there. They also have invested heavily in their data and performance sides of their business. So players who want to get more out of their game, that has been proven over time. So they have done everything
Yeah.
in their power to make it an ideal place to play, and they have also won.
Right.
So other teams should do that.
Yeah.
Why they deserve this because they have invested and been successful. If your team was great at developing pitchers like the Dodgers were or Dodgers are, maybe Roki Sasaki would come to you. If your team displayed a commitment to winning, maybe Otani, maybe Blake Snell, Yoshinobu Yamamoto would come play for you. Maybe you could give players kind of this discounted deferral dollars that the
Yeah.
Dodgers are. They're pulling every lever they can to be as good as they possibly can be. Um, and other teams aren't doing that, and they're going to lose for it. I also think, we talk about this all the time. I think that this all guarantees that the Dodgers will get to the playoffs, but we know what happens after that.
Right.
And one other point that I want to make is that while the Dodgers are very impressive and their pitching looks crazy, they have a lot of guys with a lot of injury history. And I
Yeah.
know that they have like 10 pitchers who are impressive, but my God,
All of
it
them.
is a
Yeah.
house of glass.
Yeah, they're stacking extreme upside starters,
Yes,
and they're just hoping because they're also certainly going to re-sign Kershaw whenever he's ready,
right.
probably in like July or whatever, and they're just hoping they can get to October with 3 or 4 of these guys still healthy. I'm of the belief that Roki Sasaki will be the best pitcher in baseball probably within the next 3 years, but that might also be 2 years of Tommy John.
Right.
I think there's a lot of speculation that his velocity was down in 24 because he throws 103 miles per hour in
Yep.
his arms about to break. But yeah,
Uh,
I'm of the same mind, Hambone. Like I get it, I get the frustration, but this is more of a mark on every other team than it is on
yeah.
the Dodgers. And if
One oh, sorry.
well,
One
just
other
if everyone is that upset about it, then the league can do something about it. But I think the solve is to make all the other teams actually fucking try.
One other thing I'll note is I think the league is going to do something about it. You referenced the CBA coming up in 2026.
Yeah.
I think that deferrals are going to be addressed. I think that a salary cap is going to be a huge point of conversation. And I think the Dodgers probably see all that coming. And while they can flex, they are like, let's do it. Let's go as hard as we possibly can while the rules are what they are, knowing that they are likely to change. Um, and then kind of back to the other side of it, I think the one thing that is kind of broken about baseball is that somebody like Bob Nutting, the primary owner of the Pittsburgh Pirates, can sit back, put a subpar team on the field, and collect money every year. I
Yeah.
think that's the one thing that should change, but is probably unlikely to change because why would the owners do that to themselves? But I think when you're looking at, this game is for the fans and the fans are the one keeping this thing afloat, I think it's something that baseball should address is
Yeah.
why is Bob Nutting not putting a real team on the field or at least pay like because the Rockies aren't putting a real team on the field either, but they're paying people. People are their salary is noteworthy. You
They
know,
just continually make bad contracts, but
they're
they're
just a
doing
bad organization.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they are the thing that you can argue for the Rockies over the Pirates or other teams like that is that their heart is in the right place. They don't have a brain.
Yeah, there's I think this is a topic that we could go on for quite a while about, and even the DeWitts were asked, I think maybe this is a topic for, next week or something. The DeWitts were asked about, like, operating the team as a business and how they
Yeah.
prioritize that, and I think it was an interesting answer, but, the reality is some owners treat, this as a baseball team and other, owners treat it as a real estate investment, and, the Dodgers are treating it as a baseball team. There is a fascinating article on MLB trade rumors right now, actually. It's a poll of would you trade the 2027 season for a salary cap? Because the article goes into detail about the league has tried to do a salary cap many times, and it has been a firm point of contention from the players union that they will not accept it. And so the reality is for a salary cap to go through, it likely will involve a strike and maybe a deeply extended one. So I highly recommend everyone go and read this article. And I thought you and I could probably discuss it at another
Well,
episode.
I will say enjoy 2025 and 2026 'Cause I do think almost no matter what, an extended strike is coming soon,
Yeah.
um,
Yes.
for a lot of reasons. Mostly, I think the middle class of baseball players
Yeah.
but yeah. All right. So I mentioned this, but just to reiterate, Dodgers also signed Tanner Scott, 4 years, $72 million. He's likely to be their closer. They kind of have a bit of a monster with Kopech and Trinan and Scott and Kirby Yates
Yeah.
likely coming too. But again, those are fungible assets. We'll see what happens. Don't give up on baseball next year. At least that's my opinion. The Blue Jays finally signed somebody. They brought in former Oriole Anthony Santander, 5 years, $92.5 million. A lot of that is deferred. I think that this is a fine move. I think that's a lot of money for a DH. But I don't know, perplexed by the Blue Jays.
Yeah, you end up second and third in enough things. You got to go and get somebody, right?
Just go get
And
somebody. I
and
think really what they need to do is shit or get off the pot in regards to Vladdy Jr.
yeah, yeah. But I thought this was a pretty good sign. He's going to hit a lot of home runs for them, and
Absolutely. They
I
hit dongs up there, so he'll
yeah,
he'll be part of the dong squad.
yeah,
And maybe he ages well.
maybe.
Yeah. And then final piece of news, sad news. Bob Uecker has passed away at the age of 90. Um, Obviously, being a Midwesterner, being a baseball fan, being a fan of Major
Mhm.
League and everything that Bob Uecker was a part of. Sad day. Something that I will say, there's everything in the world has been said about Bob Uecker. Funny. He was in the game for 70 years.
Mr. Baseball.
He was Mr. Baseball.
You
He was a
don't get the name Mr. Baseball without being pretty fucking central to the
while
game.
while also not really being a good baseball player, which I think is amazing. But something I just really love about him is the fact that he never retired.
Yeah.
He was going to be a broadcaster this year at 91, and unfortunately, he passed away. But just the fact that he never wanted to give it up, and was always funny and always good. I just a lot of respect for that.
You heard it here first, folks. Ben thinks you should work till you die.
Well, if you love your job, you should. If your job is announcing baseball games, I yes, I do feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
RIP. Yeah. What a legend.
yeah, and that's all the league news.
All right, Hambone, we're gonna wrap this up quickly. I think after having an incredible experience at Busch Stadium, it was interesting too, just walking around with basically no one there. Like we were kind of wandering around in the main concourse, and there was like no one around.
Giggling.
So just being in an empty stadium, empty Busch was pretty interesting and kind of fun. But I started thinking about stadiums. And I love to make you guess how some random person on the internet has ranked things.
Oh God,
And
yeah,
so we're playing a game I'm calling Stadium Gradium. And
wow,
I've got a list of from sportsnaut.com, like astronaut, but sportsnaut.
sure, yeah. This is going to be hard hitting, good journalism.
And they're ranking the top 30 baseball stadiums.
Okay,
Okay. I'm going to read to you their outline of how they made these decisions.
great.
We're weighing a variety of factors when separating the best MLB stadiums from the worst venues in baseball. Location certainly plays a part, as does the area surrounding the ballpark. But the most important element is the experience for the fans. With that in mind, let's dive into our MLB stadium
That
rankings.
is such nothing. You could have just said nothing. Okay,
All right, so Hambone, I'm going to give you
yeah.
three shots at guessing the top five.
All right, I'm gonna go number one, Fenway.
All right, Fenway is in at number four.
Oh, I already disagree with this person. I will go with the Orioles ballpark, Camden Yards.
Camden, number seven. So
Really?
that's gonna be a strike. Be a strike.
Okay. I will go with the Dodgers.
Dodgers number 9.
What?
So there's another strike for you, Hambone.
Okay. Everyone always talks about Pittsburgh. So let's do PNC Park.
PNC, that is their number 1
Number 1.
ballpark
Okay.
experience.
All right.
I have not gone.
I have not gone either.
Yeah.
But I've only heard great things about PNC Park.
Yeah.
All right. After that, I think San Diego is just a good place to be. So I'm going to say San Diego is high up there.
They are number 3. Petco Park is number 3. I am likely going to San Diego this summer, and I'm going to try to go to a game there.
Brag. I think this might be a little hometown bias, but I'm going to go with Coors Field as top 5.
Hambone, you're just going to miss out. They are number 6.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah. So number 5 is Wrigley
Giants?
Field.
Oh, yeah, Wrigley.
Yeah, person clearly likes, history, because the number 4 is Fenway. Number 3 was the aforementioned Petco. And number 2 is Oracle Park, the Giants.
Yeah. I should have guessed the Giants higher than that, but I didn't.
Yeah. So it's kind of a fine list, though I do agree, I probably swap around the top 5 maybe. But I've not been to most of these, so I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't been to every ballpark. It's hard for me to imagine a better experience than Fenway, though.
Yeah. Yeah, that was definitely an all-timer. But it is also, depending on what kind of vibe you're looking for, too, because that is like a baseball fan's, best
Yeah.
experience.
What other vibe are you looking for at a baseball
I don't know.
stadium?
People go to, you talk about it all the time. Half the people at Coors are not even there to watch the baseball game, right? So
that's a good point. It is the biggest bar in Denver.
Yeah. So, but if you want that feeling of this is not unlike what they were doing 100 years ago, you still get that at Fenway. At least we did when we were there. All the
having to duck under little pieces of metal and all the ski walkways and everything.
Super narrow. And
I'll never forget I think it was you and I and maybe a couple of the guys at the bachelor party were like, where should we go? We talked to one of the ushers and you gotta see the Truly deck.
You gotta go to the Truly deck,
which is the only new part of the ballpark. And we did
We're proud of the Truly deck.
Yeah. I don't think we got a Truly, but we did it.
We did go to the Truly deck.
We really did.
Get some chowder.
God, that was a great time. I think I ate 4 sausages. We yelled at who was the reporter we yelled at? Ken Rosenthal.
Oh, Ken Rosenthal was there. Yeah, and we also gave that ticket to that random guy who bought us all.
Our waiter, yeah.
It was our waiter, yeah.
From the waiter at the steakhouse, yeah.
Yeah, we invited him to the game, and he came and bought everyone a hot dog.
God, good times.
Good times. Yeah, a listener of the show overheard all of us being, ding-dongs and reached out after, which was really wild because we'd only been doing the podcast for a few months at that point.
Yeah.
And for there to be someone who even knew who we were was crazy.
Very silly.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's it for this week. Another long ep. We're back. Long eps are back.
Wow.
We'll be back next week. And until then, I guess good luck, Mozeliak, just getting this monkey off his shoulder and trading Arenado. I guess
we might have big news next week. Yeah, let's see.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. Bye. I don't know. I'm hopeful that this is better. I thought the same thing though. You never like to see a thing that says beta, but unless you're looking for a fish.
I thought you were going to say in the mirror.
Or a boy.